Reading nonfiction can improve your life in lots of ways. At the very least, it can help you solve problems. Want to know what else reading nonfiction can do for you? Stay tuned to find out. Hi there, I'm Library Lynn, and I make knowing great nonfiction books my mission. Don't know what to read next? I always have ideas. Most of my videos are book reviews for awesome books that I've enjoyed reading. Nothing makes me happier than sharing books I love. But today's video isn't a book review. It's more of a genre review. Like a lot of people, I love to read fiction, especially classic literature, and sometimes I enjoy a cozy mystery or a high fantasy novel. Hey, fiction is great. And I'm not saying you can't learn from fiction and that it can't make you a better person. It absolutely can. And there's nothing wrong with reading for enjoyment. Sometimes we need an escape from our problems. It's my feeling that reading makes life better, no doubt about it. But in my experience as a librarian, friend, and family member, people tend to gravitate towards fiction, and I can understand why. It's often easier to get into, and it can completely sweep you away. And many people avoid nonfiction because it can be harder to get into, and sometimes it requires more concentration. So why read it at all? Well, as Lucy said to Linus in the old Peanuts cartoon, I'll give you 5 good reasons. Reason number 1, nonfiction helps you understand how the world works. We all have mental maps of what the world is like and how it operates. My feeling is that everyone's maps have holes or gaps that can be filled in to help them understand the world better. Do you understand what's going on in Latin America, for example? I admit to having lots of holes in my understanding in that area. Just for one example, and this is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but until recently I did not understand that the South American continent is actually entirely to the south and east of North America. Of course, I understood it was to the south. I just didn't understand that it was entirely to the south and east of North America. But a map set me straight on that right away. A simple map can't fill me in on the history of the region or what life is like for the people who live there. But a book like Indian Givers by Jack Weatherford or 1491 by Charles Mann can help me understand what life was like for indigenous people before the conquistadors came. And a book like Silver, Sword, and Stone can help me see how the history of the region impacts people who live there today. In fact, I think history books help us understand situations we find ourselves in collectively. Reading A Distant Mirror by Barbara Tuchman helped me understand that many of the problems that hounded society in 13th century Europe were caused by human traits that we still deal with and that still influence what happens to us today. Reason number 2. Nonfiction can teach you how to do things. Of course, instruction manuals and textbooks are meant to teach you how to cook a meal or start a business or build a shed. And I'm so grateful for the many instructional books I've read through the years that have taught me some really useful skills. Almost once a week, I reach for Mark Bittman's How to Cook Everything. But even if a book just gives me ideas on how to do things instead of explaining them step by step, like the wonderful book, The Art of Learning by Josh Waitzkin, what I get from a book can change the entire trajectory of my life for the better. For as long as I can remember, I've wished I could draw. So right now, I'm working my way very slowly through Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain by Betty Edwards. These are 2 drawings I made from my first lesson. The first is my very first self-portrait without any instruction whatsoever, and the second is a picture that I drew upside down following her instructions. The picture I drew was upside down, and I drew it upside down. Obviously, the second one's better than the first, so I'm learning a lot already. Now, you may argue that you can learn to do these things through classes or YouTube videos, and that's absolutely true. But what's nice about a book is that you can go back and refer to it again and again. I don't buy every instructional book I read, but if I check one out of the library that's particularly helpful, I go ahead and purchase it so I'll always have it handy. Reason number 3. Reading nonfiction can increase your mental stamina. I don't have a PhD in neuroscience, although I admire people who do. But if I understand a little bit about how the brain works, it's kind of like the muscles in your body. The more you use your brain, the more connections you have between the neurons, and then you learn more, and then the stronger those connections become, and the better you think. It's a positive loop. Some nonfiction books are difficult to read. But what's difficult for any person, you or anyone else, tends to depend on what you already know. Like you, I know some medical doctors. They've been taught and have experience dealing with anatomy and illnesses. Because of this, they understand scientific and medical terminology that would go right over my head. But if I read books about the medical field, like Being Mortal by Atul Gawande, that are written for a general audience and not a specialist, it gets to be easier and easier for me to understand difficult books. As I pick up more knowledge and vocabulary, it's easier for me to understand things that would have been impossible to grasp before I read those books. And I don't know about you, but I want my brain to be flexible and able to think and learn well. I think nonfiction books like Life's Edge by Carl Zimmer and The True Believer by Eric Hoffer can really help you stretch and strengthen your neurological connections. Reason number 4. Reading nonfiction can help you understand other people. Who doesn't have difficulties with other people sometimes? Self-help books are one of the most popular types of nonfiction that people read. And while some people have questioned the effectiveness of the self-help industry, my feeling is if a book helps you, it's worth taking the time to read it. One that helped me is The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. Many of these books aim at helping you in your relationships with other people. And books that help you understand people from different ethnic, racial, or identity backgrounds can also be a tremendous help in understanding and getting along with other people. And history books can be fantastic for this. You don't have to agree with everything a person does or says to get where they're coming from. And the respect you show in trying to see things from their point of view can improve your relationships tremendously. Memoirs can also be great for helping you understand other people. One that helped me recently was Educated, a memoir by Tara Westover. It helped me understand a lot of things that I had not dealt with before, and I highly recommend it. Reason number 5. Reading nonfiction can make you more interesting. I don't know about you, but I find people who read, especially people who read broadly, very compelling. This applies to people who read fiction too. But since I'm focusing on nonfiction, I'll tell you why I think nonfiction readers are interesting people to talk with. People who read a lot of nonfiction tend to have a broader perspective on what reality is. And this is not because every nonfiction book they read is filled with the truth and nothing but the truth. Quite the contrary. All books, no matter how well researched and unbiased, are going to have some areas where they miss the mark. Perfection in anything we do is impossible, and all we can do is try. So I'm not saying people who read nonfiction know everything. No one knows everything, but it is possible to know more about something than someone else. It's just common sense that people who read nonfiction are going to know more about a topic than the average person who doesn't read about that topic. You may be saying to yourself, well, that's a bunch of bull. If I'm a surgeon, I know more about anatomy than someone who's just read a book about it. And you'd be absolutely right. But that's comparing apples and oranges. What I'm referring to is people who don't do something all day, every day, but still have the curiosity and the drive to learn about it anyhow. To me, that's the kind of person I want to be around. Someone who's open, curious, and more knowledgeable about something than I am. That's someone I really want to have a conversation with. Maybe this is just a me thing, but I've always felt like, why am I here if I'm not here to learn? And I really like to be around other people who feel the same way. So those are my top 5 reasons why you should read nonfiction. If you don't read it already but think you'd like to start, there are lots of genres to choose from. I'd urge you to pick the one that sounds the most interesting to you. Here are a few ideas to get you started. Investigative journalism into social and political issues that you care about. Books on health and fitness. Books on art and music and the people who make them. Sports and athletes. Religion and spirituality. History and travel. And that's just for starters. If you don't know where to start, I suggest you visit a library or a bookstore and browse through the titles. That can be fun all on its own. Just pick one that sounds interesting to start. You never know what great things you may learn and where it may lead. Get several if you feel led to. And don't force yourself to read something you hate. I used to tell my students the 2-chapter rule. Read 2 chapters. If you really feel like you're going to hate the book, it's okay to put it down. It's okay to put it down forever, or it's okay to put it down and go back to it later. And one thing that I do to help me, sometimes I do come to chapters in books that even if I'm enjoying the book, the chapter just seems to drag for whatever reason. I'll read the first and last sentence of every paragraph in that chapter, and that way I get through it a lot quicker. I can always go back and reread it later if I feel like I need to. But do it in a way that feels joyful to you. So those are my 5 reasons to read nonfiction. Did you agree or disagree with my points? Did I leave something out? If so, leave a comment below. For worthwhile nonfiction books to read, hit like and subscribe so you'll always have fresh ideas. And if you would like to have great nonfiction books at your fingertips, check out my book, Library Lynn's curated collection of superlative nonfiction. I gathered an entire library's worth of recommended books on every topic and arranged them by Dewey Decimal System, just like in a public library. You'll find links to all the books I mentioned in this video and my book in the description box below. If you use my link, I'll get a small commission from your purchase, and I would really appreciate that. And finally, if you like this video, share it with your book-loving family and friends. Until next time, happy reading.